want to kind of delve down on one point. Like
Sure.
you said, that most of the decisions are like complex in nature, and they are long decisions, because it might have to sit with very well with the vision of your client who is
Yep.
essentially want to. Now, the scope for failure is also then very different than B2C, right?
Yep.
You can
Yep.
fail in B2C, a button might not work, or maybe something on the landing page broke. You can always fix it. But
Yep.
doing a large release where you're changing the backend systems of a large client and then it fails, how do you essentially navigate that? That the room for
Yeah.
failure is so less, right? How do you do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And for example, when we talk about travel, anything that we do in travel is somewhat mission critical. Imagine you are at the airport and suddenly you are not able to check in. Entire system will collapse, and we have seen it. We have seen those long queues at the airport. So somewhat is mission critical. Assume you are at the hotel's reception and they are not giving you your room key, and it's almost 30-40 minutes. Imagine how much bad experience is going to be for you. So yes, somewhat travel is mission critical, and that's why what we need to do is in B2B product management, first is you have to be very clear about not just the domain but also your client's internal processes. You have to understand everything end to end, because it's not just about your functionality, your module. Obviously, your customer is going to use what you are going to offer to them. But then, as I said, you have to see what other players are involved in this entire value stream cycle for that customer. You have to understand what can go wrong. It means you have to literally understand those processes by doing that shadowing. You have to understand all the upstream, downstream systems which can break anything. So you have to not just spend time on primary research, which is generally your main focus area in B2C. Here you need to do a lot of secondary research. You need to understand everything end to end, because anything that you do can break anything else,
Yeah.
and then anything else, and then entire system will collapse on your customer side. So one is lot of secondary research is needed so that you are at least clear on all these unknown or unknown unknowns. And then once you are clear on that end-to-end process and you understand the domain, then probably if something goes wrong, you need to be very clear in terms of how fast your time to recovery is. So for example, Google has this DevOps playbook. They have what is your time to recovery. So they call it MTTR. So those are certain metrics where as product managers, you need to be somewhat involved in this entire product ops cycle to see even if something goes wrong, and things go wrong. Things will go wrong no matter how much strong your research is, how much strong your product development process is. So then you need to understand if something goes wrong, how fast I can recover, what checks and measures I can put in my product to make sure it is scalable, but it can also recover soon, it can recover fast. And then even if something goes wrong, how quickly we can provide some kind of support, some kind of alternate or workarounds to customers. So that's why in B2B product management, you have to be more hands-on. You have to be more involved on somewhat ops and technical side of your product so that you can answer clearly to your customer when things are not going your way.
Makes sense. And from taking from this queue only, I want to ask two very interesting questions. One is that when you hire for your team, right?
Mhm.
Do you look for very slightly different skill sets in the PMs than generally I would do for a company like Flipkart or maybe
Mhm.
Amazon? That's one.
Yeah.
And the second thing coming from the same question, the B part of this is that what are the general principles, or what is that archetype of a great PM? Right, that you say this person has the ability to become like a great PM and it is
Sure.
available in his behaviors. I want to talk
Mhm.
about those principles a bit, which you have seen over the long career that you've had. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so obviously, every company has some specific requirements. For example, in my case, whenever I have to hire someone, I look for two things. Obviously, that person should have good business acumen, understanding product, understanding strategy. But we also need to understand that you're not going to build strategy and you're not going to build your roadmap every day, right? So that is one aspect where most of product managers somewhat get too passionate about building roadmap, building strategy. That is one aspect, but that's not something which they'll do on a day-to-day basis. So on day-to-day basis, what we are going to do? you have to be very smart in terms of execution. How can you execute things? How can you execute things fast? That is something which I really understand. And I try to ask questions around execution a lot, because domain knowledge will take months, years. But execution requires certain principles. For example, if you want to execute something, you need to be very clear in terms of what are you going to do, and how are you going to deliver what is expected from you, and do you have this ability to understand everything. So when you want to be a good executor, you will have good clarity, you will obviously have a structured way of thinking about certain things, and you will ask the right questions. So as long as you are able to do all of this, I feel that person has all the right credentials, because I can't judge anybody based on domain. Because even when I joined Sabre, to be honest, I did not know the full form of PNR, right? Because there was no need for me to know what is the full form of PNR. Now I know. But when I joined Sabre, nobody asked me that, tell me the full form of PNR, because that is very specific question related to travel. So those things I believe person can learn. But these are those core things that I always look for
Does
whenever I
that
have
does
to
that
hire.
mean that you also hire PMs from generally very diverse domains?
Mhm.
What I mean by that is, is this a requirement that you generally see, that if somebody is from the travel and B2B domain, maybe
Yeah.
somebody coming from an Airbnb building internal systems, that would be a better fit versus someone who is probably coming from a fintech domain and but has very sound principles, right?
Mhm.
Would those be kind of similar candidates for you, right? In that perspective? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I look for top 1% operator.
That's
So
super
no,
cool.
I agree. I don't really personally think too much about domain, because I know if you have the right skill set and right understanding in terms of what you want to do, you can definitely learn the domain. And learning domain takes time. So we can't really judge or hire a person based on domain understanding. So I am always okay. Obviously, we like if somebody has that required domain, but for me it doesn't matter. I have seen a lot of product managers, and one very personal example, one of my product managers who is still part of my team, he had very different background. He did his hospitality management, then he worked with hotels, then he would work with a couple of typical hospitality kind of companies where he was taking care of everything which is non-tech. He joined Sabre, he was part of our help desk, and then eventually he wanted to become product manager, and no tech background. But sound guy, he was very well appreciated in terms of his effort, in terms of his acumen to do and go always above and beyond. He's part of a team, and he's one of our rock stars. And he takes care of a lot of technical things which he learned on his own. So if you have right skill set, as you always say, and if you have right way of doing things, I think you can learn and you can deliver
And
anywhere.
why do I do this is because for a lot of times they don't listen to me and I call my friends and just break those biases that
Sure.
anybody can move from anywhere, right?
Yes.
It was just kind of a validation question, but
Mhm.
so amazed